In the summer of 1914, Europe was a continent on the brink. A tangled web of alliances, fueled by rising nationalism and imperial ambitions, had created a powder keg waiting for a spark. On the surface, it was an era of unprecedented progress, but beneath, tensions were simmering. How did this gilded age of empires and monarchies collapse into the deadliest war humanity had ever seen? This is the story of the Great War. It all began with a single gunshot in Sarajevo. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, by a Serbian nationalist was the trigger. But the real causes were far deeper. Europe was divided into two armed camps: the Triple Entente of France, Britain, and Russia versus the Triple Alliance of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. Decades of a relentless arms race had filled their arsenals, and a complex system of treaties meant that a conflict between two nations would quickly drag the entire continent into war. Within weeks, declarations of war flew like confetti, and millions of men marched off, promised a swift victory by Christmas. They were tragically wrong. On the Western Front, the war bogged down into a brutal stalemate. A vast network of trenches stretched from the Swiss Alps to the North Sea. Life in these muddy, rat-infested ditches was a living hell. Between the opposing lines lay no man's land, a barren wasteland of craters and barbed wire. Battles like the Somme, Verdun, and Ypres became infamous for their staggering casualties, with millions lost for mere inches of ground. New technologies turned the battlefield into an industrial slaughterhouse. The thunder of artillery was constant. Machine guns cut down advancing soldiers in waves. Poison gas choked the lungs of its victims, and the first lumbering tanks crawled across the scarred earth, forever changing the face of warfare. But this was truly a world war. The conflict spread far beyond Europe. Soldiers from colonies in Africa, India, and across the British Empire were sent to fight for their imperial masters. On the Eastern Front, vast armies clashed across the plains of Russia. The Ottoman Empire entered the war, opening new fronts in the Middle East and sparking the Arab Revolt. The United States joined the fray in 1917, tipping the balance of power. For 4 long years, the world bled. By 1918, the Central Powers were exhausted. A final German offensive failed, and with their allies collapsing and revolution brewing at home, Germany had no choice but to seek an armistice. At the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the guns finally fell silent. Empires that had stood for centuries, the Russian, the Austro-Hungarian, the Ottoman, and the German, were all gone. The war to end all wars, however, did not bring lasting peace. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, imposed harsh terms on Germany, breeding resentment and economic hardship. The political map of Europe was redrawn, but the underlying tensions remained. The Great War left a scar on the soul of the 20th century, a legacy of loss and a grim lesson in the human cost of conflict. In its aftermath, the seeds of an even greater war were already being sown. Remembering this history is not just about looking at the past. It's about understanding our present and striving for a more peaceful future. Thank you for watching. If you found this journey through history meaningful, please consider subscribing for more deep dives into the events that shaped our world.